Hi. So the last two episodes we have learned how to map different buttons and different sliders of a MIDI controller to OCC commands. And we hook that up with GLSL Viewer and we drive some parameters on a shader. So today I want to take your skills a little further and teach you how you can, with a little bit of JavaScript on MidiGyver's YAML file, configuration YAML file, you can program some of the keys on it. So you can get extra or more complicated behavior when you in the configuration. So I want to go through the pipeline so we have a clear understanding of how MidiGyver data pipeline looks like. So you will understand where, when we are coding, where are you actually coding on. So basically we have the MIDI control here, and we have the output, right? And MidiGyver is all this space in between the output. The output that we will produce on MidiGyver is a comma separated value or an OSSC. And the keys that comes from the device essentially have a key number, and a value. This value is going to be between 0 and 127. Then in the two previous episodes we learned about how to do some mapping, where we basically base it on a type, and this type can be it can be a number, it can be a vector, it can be a color, it can be a button or a toggle button, or also, and this I haven't seen yet, is a string. So based on a type, we define a map, and that map will have like basically an array of elements that it will interpolate this 0 to 127 value, and then this is going to be ready to go in the out. But what I want to talk today, and the scripting that we're going to do, is sits between the MIDI event entering into MidiGyver and the mapping, so previous to the mapping. And this is, I call it shaping. So what is shaping? Shaping is going to be another entry called shape, and the shape is going to be a function, JavaScript function. So this function is going to essentially receive some variables. So we're going to have access to the key, to the number of the key, to the value, and also we're going to learn that inside this JavaScript context you can have globals. And then you will use all that data, you will process it, and you will return something. Usually, and by default, what you return here is the value itself. So the value comes into the JavaScript context, and this value pass, and this value is the one that is mapped, and this gets out, and that's it. So having this context about it, I want to jump to code. So we're gonna start by copying the test number that we have been working on, the test file 00, and we're gonna create a new one, test 2. So let's jump into this test file, YAML. So here, what we don't need, we're not going to use the keys, this, or at least this button. We're gonna keep the fader, which is the key number 0 that you see at the top, and we're gonna add these two buttons. So I'm gonna go back to the key. One of the first things that we need to know is what is the number of the keys of this button. So for that, I'm going to grab protocol, a great tool, by the way, and I'm going to press it, and you will see that this is the key and the key number is 61. When I press, it's 127, and when I release, it goes back to 0. And 62 is the following one. So we're going to basically map these two keys to behavior. So here, 61, we're going to call this U polygon, because what we are going to control on the shader side, at least, is going to be the size of a polygon. It's a simple exercise, but I think it's going to be enough. Because the type at the end is going to be a number, I'm going to put a scalar here. And we are not going to map it. What we're going to do, we're going to put a shape function. And for you, just so you see, this by default looks like this. So if let's divide the screen, let's save this. If I run this, you should be able, I made a mistake. It's very important to get the indentation right. Yeah, there you go. So when I press this button, you can see the same results. Nothing happens with the other one because we haven't mapped it, but so far we're in a good track. Let's repeat the same thing for the following key. And here I'm going to be using the same name because ultimately we want to print to the same uniform, right? So polygon type scalar shape function return value. So far so good. Let's try again. Now both keys are mapped. We'll return to here, and here's where it gets interesting because we're gonna jump to code inside the JavaScript context. I'm gonna put this away for a second. So the first thing that I want to define is some set of global variables. So the variables is gonna be called polygon. It's gonna hold the number of sides of our polygon. So we're gonna start with a square. So it's gonna be 4 sides. And then here we can retrieve that information. So I'm gonna say, okay, if the value is equal to 127, this means it's pressing, not releasing. I want to return global polygon, but not before subtracting. So this is the previous one. We're gonna subtract one value to global polygon. And we're gonna do the same thing here. Value is equal to, we are gonna return first the global polygon plus 1. And here you probably anticipate this, but it's gonna return, otherwise it's gonna return value, which is going to be 0, and this is gonna potentially mess up our program, because it's gonna, what it's pressing is gonna go to the number 4 or number 3 or whatever numbers, and then it's gonna get back to 0, which is something that we don't want, because if like a 0 sides polygon is not. So what we are gonna do here, we have two options. One is to return the same polygon number. So you basically, it will return the same number that was before, but if we want to be more efficient and send less information, just the one that we need, we can return here false. With this will interrupt the mapping. It will skip the mapping and just send the value. This will actually interrupt the mapping and the sending. It will interrupt the thing there. So if it's false, nothing will happen. So let's try this. This should work. So here we're gonna run it. It compiles. Everything seems fine. And 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect. So now you can see these two buttons has a little more functionality, and you can use it in a slightly more interesting way. That's just a fader. So you can imagine that using this logic, you can do pretty interesting combinations between your keys. But before leaving, let's try this in a shader. So I already prepare a shader. It's a simple continuation of the previous one. I'm using from the Pixel Spirit deck, I'm using the function poly SDFs, and I'm reusing the stroke from the one before. So it's pretty straightforward. Most of the magic is contained on the Pixel Spirit deck. But what I want to show you is that in the stroke, the fader is going to control the position on so basically the size of the shape. And the second value that this polygon SDF function takes is a float that has the uPolygon uniform that we are sending here. So this should plug correctly. So I'm going to close this one and I'm going to run, and you will see that at the beginning nothing is showing, and this is expected because the uniform polygon is equals to 0. So as soon as I press this, something appears. Let's make it bigger, and you can see how now it's matching. So if we put it side by side, you can see that polygon is 4, now it's 3, now it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You got it. So here you have, again, it's a simple exercise, but I think it makes the point. I hope this excites you about the possibilities, and please subscribe. I'm going to keep posting more of the tools and tips and things that I do. So please subscribe, like this tutorial, and because with your support I can make more. So please do, and show me and send me things that you're doing with it. This MidiGyver is in a very experimental and earlier stage, so I'm very open to future requests and so forth. Thank you.